Oh, hello, I'm on with Blue Bros, going to Blue Bros, guys. I'm the one with Blue Marination. And if you guys are wondering why it's been so long since I've uploaded, tree fell and it took out several of the lines, and no internet. So I kind of had to readjust myself to everything. But hey, now we have two Sonic what ifs. They're basically gonna have the same thumbnail. And also, we'll be basically officially either on double digits or after double digits with Marvel Renegade Wrestling Federation. And because of that, there will be a King of the Ring tournament with a total of 10 competitors. 3 of them being of new blood, if you know what I mean. So, yeah. If you guys are wondering how the hell this is actually going to happen, well, My Hero Academia is supposed to be like ridiculously in the future. Well, Mobius is supposed to be Earth, but like 300 years in the future. My Hero Academia is like Earth, but like 2,000 years in the future. So, yeah, a lot of changes would indeed be happening. And so, Sonic and Friends will basically have their whole thing. And a thing to consider is Mobians apparently do have a longer lifespan because Sonic and Friends, you know, are able to basically live all the way through up to, current events. That being, well, this defenseless little lady getting cornered by both Alpha One and Eggman. And basically seeing as a symbol of peace, All Might, or at least what he had actually made himself out to be, has not, gotten there. However, someone else has seemed to have appeared on the scene. A sort of blue blur, as basically knocking both Off One and Eggman out of the way. In which he will indeed basically, show up and tell this lady, this lady Inca Midoriya, actually, that they were basically, Sonic the Hedgehog, and that, no need to thank them, just doing, basically what a hero would do. And, well, basically ever since then, Inko had indeed grown a fondness for Sonic. And Sonic, even though it did take him a while, I mean, come on, he does have Amy slash Ames to worry about. And then there's the whole thing with the fact that Sally was roboticized, had to deal with that. Sam, Sonic isn't exactly the best whenever it comes to affection at all. But that is sort of like a problem that is, sort of worked out, worked through over time. And eventually, basically, eventually, Sonic had eventually, been staying around for a while at Enko's place because Enko insisted that since he was such a great, person or, whatever, Mobian, basically he was such a great, basically, that she wouldn't really care. I mean, he just seemed to be such a drifter most of the time, and always staying in one place, that, she wouldn't mind at all, actually accommodating him. Yeah, I mean, he was so nice and he even saved her. So she wouldn't mind at all, actually, giving him a place to stay. And so eventually, a sort of relationship had began to grow and sort of foster and, well, into something quite nice. And eventually got into the point where Sonic basically, already knowing that he's pretty much a hero regardless of hero license or not, and he eventually did end up getting his own sort of job thing as a pro hero of Japan as well, all the way up to the point where he basically became a co-pro hero. Not just any co-pro hero, but a co-number one pro hero. Yes, he's literally up there with All Might. Literally, they share the spot. And considering just how fast Sonic is, Inko really doesn't, feel too worried about him actually being able to be there for anything important, because Sonic's just that damn fast. And so, well, basically, eventually, they would indeed get married. And if you guys are gonna worry about, like, bestiality, get in mind, this is the age of quirks we're talking about, and you know what some quirks do to people. I mean, come on. So it isn't really all that frowned upon, this happening. And well, not long after that, eventually everything's come to terms with. And not really all that long after, Mitsuki and Masaru had basically exclaimed to the Midoriyas, as Sonic and Inko now were known, basically that, Mitsuki was pregnant, and, they believe that the doctor said something about it being a boy. And then the Bakugo's basically hit with a surprise of a lifetime whenever Sonic says that he basically has already, been told from Inko that, she's pregnant. And that her son is, like, basically her child is basically going to be a boy. And it's not just her child, it's their child. Because Sonic has decided he's not gonna go and try to get that milk. No, he's gonna be the one who is going to step up. He will indeed be the. It's like that, saying like when you are the child support. And well, basically, so the Midoriyas and the Bakugos basically, you know, take their damn time with the whole thing, waiting basically until, their children would be born. And Mitsuki, regardless of how, polite it actually was to ask these type of questions, and Masaru would even add to that, are you sure it's okay to ask that? Like, would basically ask, if she thought, the kid was going to have a tail or, like, the ears on top instead of to the side, like Sonic. or if like his hair was going to be blue like Sonic, which both Sonic and Inko do have green eyes, so that's not really something that they should really worry about. And then again, Sonic does interject with the fact that his eyes used to be black. But over time, he kind of developed them a little bit more and they became green. But regardless of what happened, they were going to be good parents nonetheless. Or at least he hopes so. And so, the, time in which, the Bakugos, well, Mitsuki would have her kid. Basically, with everybody being so dang excited over all this shit. And, Katsuki, which is basically what they decided to name their kid, Katsuki Bakugo, basically having the same temperament as his mother, a freaking just absolute crazy. And so whenever it came time for the whole thing of the Midoriyas, well, it would basically, but one day, not too long after the whole thing with the Bakugos, where Sonic would basically be just to be, about to leave All Might, after basically finishing up a pretty good, wash job, with some villains, getting rid of them. Whenever he would get a call basically saying that Inko's water had broken. And from the looks of things, when she was supposed to give birth, it seemed very early, actually. A very early birth. And this made Sonic very worried. Because usually that doesn't mean anything good for the child or for the mother. Sonic's not stupid. He knows that this could end very badly. And he's just like, oh, why did it have to happen now? He's just like, sorry about that, All Might. I gotta go. Duty calls, Duty as a parent. And All Might would just be like, oh, yeah, that. Yeah, you should definitely go. And that's basically what Sonic does. Like, he basically light speed dashes all the way over there. And basically freaking out and basically, yelling at the nurse that, his literal freaking son is about to be born. And, the nurse actually realizing that this is actually the co-number one hero, next to All Might. So, yeah, basically just, escorting Sonic towards the correct room. After all, he does remember the whole thing about, the Midoriyas. So, indeed, this does happen. But Sonic finds by the time that basically they got there, Inko had already, given birth. And basically, what Sonic sees is just, this cute little, cinnamon roll, green hair, green eyes. And, they just seem so damn adorable. And, of course, it seemed that Inko had already been holding, them for a while. So, Inko decides, since Sonic has finally got there, that, she would give him a turn. After all, this was indeed his son. And, Sonic would literally just be like, like, Inko does not even know half of the amount of, this means to him to actually be able to, hold his son. His literal pride and joy. That would, brought him to this world. That Inko and Sonic helped to do that. However, the nurse would have certain words with Sonic that she kind of basically insinuated that she already had, basically made sure to not tell, Inko, or at least if she told Inko anything of this, that it was a more watered down version. And basically, Sonic is expecting the worst. And, is now holding, Izuku even tighter than he already was. Just fearing for the worst. Well, basically, the nurse actually saying, do you want the good news first or the bad news? And Sonic, not really understanding fully, basically was just like, I guess the good news? And, well, the nurse just being like, well, he does indeed have a quirk. So if by the time he's 5 and you get to the quirk doctor and he says that he doesn't, they're probably going to be lying to you. Because he does indeed seem to have, a very powerful quirk. The bad news, though, is what exactly the quirk is. Because the nurse, just like most of the people in Japan, not just Japan, but the planet, know about a certain incident that happened a while back, in which the planet was nearly destroyed after Sonic had fought a metal copy of himself for the first time ever. The first ever version of a certain metal copy that never seemed to, stop being used to try and kill him. But this original version was indeed one that, unlike the others, could indeed feel enough compassion that they actually sacrificed themselves to save the planet. And the reason why she brings this up is because the quirk seems to be something of a literal replication of that exact thing. Almost as if said individual was being reborn through Izuku's quirk. Basically telling Sonic that, the original metal copy of himself who literally nearly killed him is basically his son's quirk. And they were even able to prove this by getting a certain sample. They couldn't get a blood sample because their freaking syringe broke, but they sort of got a little bit of a hair sample, but from what they could get, they're pretty sure that that's what this is. And also that because of this, She wanted to become a complication in Izuku's birth. Said complication being well, you could indeed say Izuku is a lot like the Lich King from World of Warcraft because, as the nurse clearly states, and she even has some sort of like a visual thing, like some sort of like, to look at the inside of Izuku to prove that what she's saying is the truth and that she's not just talking out of her ass. His heart is not there. And whenever Sonic sees this, he's like, then how is he alive? And basically the nurse is like, you didn't listen to a single thing I said about the whole, metal copy thing. Pretty sure that's the only reason why he is alive. It's the fact that his quirk literally has him like the second coming of the original Metal Sonic. The original metal copy of you, the one that could feel compassion enough to actually have itself be a sacrifice for, indeed, the actual safety of the entire planet. And so Sonic basically has to be faced with the fact that his son doesn't even have a heart. And that the only reason that he's alive is because of his quirk and what it's basically turned him into. And that basically he doesn't look at it at first, but indeed he is, and he can even, turn into a certain metal copy. What he can basically turn into. So yeah, that's a big weight to drop on somebody. And basically, the narcissist explains that basically the only reason that she didn't really explain all this to Inko is that she literally thought like she was literally going like to freak the frick out and purposely cause herself to stress out to the point of almost or possibly even actually dying. I mean, it was basically like a lot of stress on herself already by giving, basically early birth. But, just the fact of this entire thing, basically because of what Izuku was and, is, that he doesn't even have a heart. Because of exactly what Izuku is. Because that's actually what they both decided to name their child if it was a boy. That they would name the, child Izuku. Sonic and Inko decided that. That if the kid was a boy, they would name them Izuku. And, well, basically, this weighs on, Sonic heavily. So much so that he basically decides that, he needs a little bit of a chill pill for a sec. That's basically what he tells the nurse. And that, basically giving the nurse Izuku and basically telling the nurse that, well, he, does indeed take his chill pill, and I put that in parentheses here, and there and everywhere, to basically allow Inko to hold, Izuku again, because, it's her child too. And, Sonic would be doing his personal, soul searching and whatnot. Which basically, what he's actually going to be doing is calling up a certain flame hero who also has been having a lot of family issues. And seeing if he could indeed find a way to, bounce ideas off with this certain flame hero. That being the number 2 hero, Endeavor. And since Endeavor only really has problems with All Might, he doesn't really have any problems with Sonic, they're able to bounce off ideas off with each other, pretty easy peasy lemon squeezy, like easy, like GG easy. Endeavor doesn't have that personal disdain that he has with All Might, with Sonic. They're able to hit it off relatively easy, even though Sonic doesn't like the fact that Ray basically had to go to an insane asylum, just, like a mental ward, basically because of everything that happened with that. And not only that, but because of stuff related to that, one of Endeavor's children, Toya Todoroki, basically that shit happened. And a whole can of worms. And none of those gummy worms either. I mean, Jesus. Literal Christ and crackers. Jesus. And so, upon basically the years of Izuku's life, he's aware that other children have this thumping in their chest, but he doesn't, for some reason. And he is given the knowledge that this thumping is caused by this thing called a heart. And, well, though he is personally told by both his parents that basically not to tell anyone about the fact that he doesn't feel it, even though he's somehow still alive. But that's because, basically, of his quirk. And so, yeah, things get really awkward. It isn't until, basically, Izuku gets, around the age that, Endeavor started to train Shoto. Basically, Shoto would indeed find a sort of kindred spirit, a sort of training partner in Izuku. Because they'd basically be starting their training at around the same age as each other. And, wouldn't be too far away, so they'd kind of be able to connect on a level that was, beyond just training. They could socialize a little bit, at least a little bit. And so, yeah. Basically, and what Sonic does know that, Izuku can't handle, of what, abilities he probably has, Sonic basically, trains Izuku into the ground. Though surprisingly, or not surprisingly, from whatever angle you're looking through or at, Izuku takes to this training like a fish, taken to water. And, is, quite, good at it. And by the time he actually, gets to, well, the point of, well, the actual quirk doctor, the doctor actually being Dr. Ujiko, or, secret actual name, Garaki, and, basically trying to, assist off for one and taking this kid's quirk, seeing as it seems, relatively useful for the time being. However, the doctor seems to be quite terrified of what he's starting to find out. He can't take it. And that apparently somehow through trying to take his quirk, he basically figures out that this kid apparently doesn't actually have a heart. Yet is still actually alive. In a certain sense. And so, can't really, lie because he wasn't actually able to take away the quirk, so he basically explains what Sonic basically refused to explain to Enko, seeing as Sonic was out, doing hero work, hoping with all his lucky stars that, the doctor didn't reveal any delicate information. However, all those hopes were dashed whenever he basically came home, and Enko started, just absolutely chewing up and spitting him out on keeping all his information. Basically, just chewing Sonic up and spitting him out. And so basically all the way up until the end of, all their, middle school, all the way up until basically the end of middle school, where basically Bakugo just has his own little shit fit over and into basically everything. Izuku wouldn't have actually wanted Bakugo to know about his quirk because of, certain reactions that, people have had over it. Izuku actually, having the mindset of certain people whenever certain quirks, considered villainous. And him actually starting to believe that that's how his quirk is, wouldn't actually want to tell Bakugo that he indeed had a quirk. So Bakugo would presume that he was quirkless, which couldn't be further from the truth. It's just that, Izuku was ashamed of his quirk, because he indeed believed that, it made him seem, villainous. To the point of actually not saying anything about having a quirk to, Kacchan. And so therefore, he would basically be bullied. And would never show signs of his quirk, because he wouldn't want, Kacchan to see his quirk. And it would only be after basically the end of all this shit that basically, gone and happened. Basically, Izuku, trying to take a little bit of a shortcut to his mother's house because, they are making katsudon, pork katsudon, his favorite. And, also, Izuku just didn't really feel like, all this, same shit. And besides, that wouldn't be the only thing that they would be making. Not only pork katsudon, but also chili dogs, because, Sonic's like chili dogs. And, Inko had kind of, finally decided to forgive but not forget about the whole, withholding information. So, yeah. But basically, while, Izuku was going through the tunnel, this is like this thing will just go through a damn manhole, like this big old slimy sludgy boy, and we'll be like, Kid, I need your body. I didn't know that sideshow freak was in town. And the doctor is too far away for giving me any, assistance. So I need your damn body to get to him without anyone noticing. And basically, Izuku, knowing what the sludgy dude probably meant whenever mentioning doctor, because Sonic wouldn't actually be stupid enough to not tell Izuku about, the dangers of Eggman. Basically being considered, tying with All for One as a sort of number one villain. And basically, it'd be at this time, the sludge villain would just manhandle Izuku, because Izuku, it would be like, quirk usage is just kind of illegal unless, have like a hero license. And even though he was already about to die, he was not about to break the damn law. Yeah, Izuku's that stubborn about that. And, well, basically, the last thing you hear before, turning to black was Texas Smash! And then, shortly after, you'd kind of get like smacked across the face several times. And, finally waking up to see that it was All Might. And, he would indeed request an autograph, but he wouldn't be nearly as freaking out as he would have been in canon, because he has actually two ones that he considers favorite heroes. Well, All Might, of course, but also his father. The Unrivaled Speed Demon hero, also known as the fastest thing alive, Sonic the Hedgehog. The co-number one hero, along with, Japan's symbol of peace, All Might. So both of them are big inspirations for Izuku to do, what he can to indeed become a hero. But, that whole thing with the sludge villain was pretty, debilitating. Plus, basically being shot out of the sludge villain through that, big old Texas Smash, it was also incredibly debilitating. For the young boy. In which, All Might would actually kind of hint at the fact that Izuku actually did use his quirk. Because apparently, before, the sludge was actually all the way about to get in, he apparently activated some sort of black shield, and he seemed to turn into some sort of metal armor. Basically, him going into his metal Sonic form and using the black shield to protect himself from being completely overrun by the sludge villain before All Might could save him. Not like he would really need saving, considering he was surrounded by the black shield, and there is no way in hell that the sludge villain is strong enough to pierce through that. Or even make a crack or a dent or anything through the freaking black shield. Of all things. And that would have really infuriated the sludge villain so much that he wouldn't have even noticed, the sound of All Might's voice whenever he would have said, Texas Smash! And so he would have just completely got his clock cleaned. And so, with enough support in his life to not really need, these, basically, the whole entire thing about, can I become a hero even though I don't have a quirk? Because he knows he does, and, with the support of his father also being, number one hero, along with All Might, both big inspirations for him, he would indeed know that he could indeed become a hero. But he would also really want to apply for, UA. And basically, Alma would be like, splendid, as I will be teaching there. Basically, with Izuku now knowing that All Might wouldn't need, and plus he had already signed an autograph, before Izuku could even say anything, All Might would already presented him with his number 13 notebook with an autograph, his autograph on it. And basically, with the news that All Might would be teaching there, Izuku's, he's reinvigorated as ever. And what even, pumps him up even more is, well, All Might's like, I am indeed glad that you're happy, but I must also indeed warn you about something else, young Midoriya. That name of yours. It also sparks something up that I hadn't been, considering in a while, seeing as I wasn't sure if he was serious whenever he had brought it up. But then again, usually when something that serious comes up, he is actually serious about it. For once. Sonic the Hedgehog will also be teaching there. And basically hearing that his father is going to be teaching there as well, basically just overloads Izuku and he is just elated with joy. And, oh boy. And, well, then it would come time for the 10 months of training, in which Sonic would also want to help spearhead. And then Inko would even, reveal that, she used to be a pro hero herself before she retired. And that just so happened to be the time in which she was attacked by Eggman and All For One. The time that she retired. And that her pro hero name was actually G-Force. And that her telekinetic quirk actually used to be, a lot more powerful. Though she has been trying to get in shape a little bit more so that it could be a little bit more powerful, so it would be like living the glory days of her old hero life, actually having enough power to help train her son alongside, his father. They would both be training him for basically the 10 months, so that whenever he entered for the entrance exam of UA, that he would indeed be ready. Sonic actually whispering to Inko that he actually wanted to take that basically Izuku to. Well, he knows that Izuku originally wasn't planning to take any sort of recommendation, but he also knows that that's especially going to change whenever he basically tells him that, he actually, talked to Principal Nesu and actually got a whole thing where basically, he could recommend him. And, because it was him that recommended him, basically take his own personalized recommendation test. And this would especially be something that Izuku wouldn't be willing to refuse. A recommendation test by his father. So, yeah. 10 months of training is basically extremely cruel and extremely ruthless to Izuku. But, he still makes it through. Relatively, okay. And so whenever it finally does come for, Sonic to, indeed pop that, big old thing about, a special recommendation test by him, nonetheless, his own father, who is also, the number one pro hero, basically Sonic the Hedgehog, next to All Might. This is indeed sort of like, basically like Mission Impossible, an offer you can't refuse. Or is that like freaking like The Godfather? It's one of those. It's either one of those or both. I don't really like Jesus Christ. And so basically around the time, that, everything is set and well, basically getting the acceptance letter by Inco because, Sonic had been the one doing the testing, so Inco decided that she would also want to play a part, and that would be the part of being the one to give Izuku the acceptance letter. And, well, basically, wanting to sort of, like, celebrate, with his family, his mom and dad, he would personally go out after, taking a good old shower, after, basically passing with flying colors, his mother telling him that, he'd basically pass the test with flying colors, that he would basically go out to, find his dad personally, so, could bring him over for a celebration of, him passing the test and therefore getting into UA. And so it would be while doing this, so basically, Inko would be watching the news, and from a certain angle, she would see something come into view. Well, some things. All Might would appear to be off in the distance fighting some giant-ass bird creature. Not exactly the high-end Nomu, but not exactly a pushover either. It would indeed be a Nomu, but not exactly the high-end Nomu, but still not exactly a pushover. It would indeed at least be enough to be considered a good enough distraction for whatever was planned. And oh boy, would it be a sick and sadistic hell of a plan. By none other than the Doctor himself. And, basically, the only reason that really plan actually worked at all is because it was a sneak attack. That giant-ass wrecking ball basically smacking right into Sonic's freaking spinal column as he was, basically hearing all this shit about, basically about, a celebration that they were going to do, as a family from Izuku, and that, he needed to go over because, basically waiting for him to be there, so that they could all celebrate. And basically while this was like talking, all this was being explained, is whenever the sneak attack would occur. However, the sneak attack was so coordinated as to basically have it to where Sonic would land would definitely be something that would be crushing and debilitating to the point of actual death. Because, before Sonic's been able to, withstand some pretty lethal blows, but not this time. Because this time, All Might and this Nomu-like creature would have basically been charging at each other, and Well, they'd basically have been going mono, basically constantly ramming into each other. And basically, All Might would start to deflate, not exactly realizing how long he had been in his All Might form. And upon this, basically, the Nomu would slip from his grasp and continue its momentum, continuing to charge. Yeah, that's right, this was a coordinated attack as it would hit into Sonic as he was flying, and then Eggman would turn the machine around as it would go for a second hit, as the Nomu would then uppercut Sonic into a third and final hit from the Wrecking Ball, smashing Sonic into the ground. Bloodied, battered, beaten, and without a single heartbeat. No movement of the chest, no gasping for air. This would have been a coordinated sneak attack that would have been too absolutely destructive and chaotic for Sonic to counter at all. And All Might would just have to watch as this had all happened, because he wasn't able to keep his form long enough to keep his grip and stop Sonic from being completely destroyed like that. And all it took was a couple of combo moves from Nomu and a couple of hits of the Wrecking Ball from Eggman's Eggmobile. And Izuku would have completely blacked out. And that is until something vicious would have occurred. Something absolutely horrifying. Other than would have already just happened.
Insure your small business with a fellow small business owner. Talk to an agent today.
Then who was it? Who locked you up here for trying to conquer the world?
It was...
That's right.
All living things nearly over, Master. Sonic has finally transformed!
That's Metal Sonic?
That's right. Izuku would basically have lost his shit. And, well, it's basically putting it lightly. Heavily lightly. And, well, as Inko was basically seeing this on the news, they would have to basically cut to something else, which basically have been the footage of All Might kicking the Nomu's ass, as he would have just gone for another burst of his All Might form. Toshinori going for yet another burst of that form, finally just ending the Nomu right there. Right then and there. And, well, All Might basically just having to, scramble for words, basically trying to... What exactly was he going to do to try to explain this to Inko? Like, the fact that her husband just got murdered. And basically, Eggman would just be like, he had finally, freaking killed his, blue nemesis. He had finally done it. And he could actually, give a shit less about whatever Awful One's deal was. He had finally, fulfilled his whole thing of killing Sonic. Now no one could really stand in his way. And also, where did the kid go? Yeah, that's right. Amidst all the chaos, Izuku seemed to have disappeared. And seeing as the camera feed wasn't really focused on him whenever this happened, Inko would have basically also wondered, where did our kid go? Where did our little Izuku go? First her husband dies, and now this. What the absolute fuck? And on the business of where Izuku went, this was basically a last minute burst of chaos control. Teleporting him somewhere that would seem a little bit more peaceful and safe than where he was right now. Almost something sort of instinctual trying to get Izuku to, safety that was more relatively, closer to what actually would be considered safe. And, well, the thing about that being, well... Indeed, this will be interesting. To say the least. Because whenever Izuku would have awoke, you would basically see two kids, a small girl that, well, small wouldn't exactly look like she was like, well, basically what her stature would imply of her age. She actually would have looked relatively, not exactly old, but not exactly, like a little kid either. And then there would be just this, like, well-dressed man. And upon, just listening to the voices. Basically, realizing that one of the kids had a little, eye patch thing over his eye. And that the skin on the other boy, some of the skin seemed to be actual fake skin. And, Izuku would then just get up and be like, why do you have an eye patch over your eye? And, well, not necessarily an eye patch, but just more or less a giant ass bandage. And why are you wearing fake skin? And basically this, little person, this little, whoever she was, would just basically be like, you're alive! And you're awake too! That's great! You hear that, General? He recovered. And perfectly too, I might add. Though I think you might actually be perpetually stuck in that form. Though it seems less hostile than whenever you found you. Isn't that right, Gentle? And basically this other person had been calling Gentle, but just basically just give a curt bow and, basically tell him his name, that he was Gentle Criminal. And that this person over here, his associate, was La Brava. And that these two boys over here were people much like him, people that were basically caught in an extremely bad situation and probably wouldn't be able to recover from it anytime soon. And, considering their relationship with their father, probably wouldn't even want to return home, even if they could recover from the situation that they were in. These two boys, the one with the patch over their eye, revealing themselves to be Shoto Todoroki, and the one with the fake skin, revealing themselves to be the long-thought dead Toya Todoroki. And then basically ever since Shoto figured out, about Toya actually being alive, but actually, the actual reason for him disappearing, ever since, had found out about those things, he had basically gone with Toya, the same route that he had went down as well, a route that basically, where basically the only thing to do with their father and down this route would be whenever they would roast him. Yeah, they had very clear disdain for their father, to the point in which they actually wanted to kill the man. Regardless of him being the number 2, flame hero endeavor. And, well, also, Izuku being extremely confused about the whole, look thing. That's until he realizes, certain things about him. He seems to be perpetually stuck in this state of how he is whenever he was training with his quirk, at, the request of both his father and mother. He seems to be perpetually stuck in this state, in which they had actually named it Metal Sonic. And considering, he was literally around 2 criminals and 2 people who didn't want to be associated with their father, who was a pro hero, not exactly at all, unless that association was basically them killing the man. So, yeah. Basically, Gentle explaining things in La Brava, Also explaining things that, they were all caught in, certain situations in which forced them to go down this path. More or less, La Brava was just a really big fan of Gentle and how he did things. So she decided to basically go down a certain path as to where she could indeed help the man. And Izuku finding that would actually be, a very admirable thing to do. Help someone. Even if it was, to do villainous deeds. And Gentle would actually reveal that even in all of his villainous, workings, he had never actually killed anyone. And never actually, drawn blood from a hero. Just, made sure to attack back, but never draw blood and never kill. As his name clearly stated, he was a gentle criminal. The gentle criminal. And that he even made, herbal tea for everyone. Herbal Grey, especially Herbal Grey. And, basically, this would also bring to attention, Izuku's attention. Or I guess, he basically would have now realized that since he can't go back, basically now he was kind of stuck with these people, and they really didn't want to do anything, that was good. He was kind of stuck as a villain, whether he liked it or not. And so that he would have to get used to it, regardless of how his feelings were on the matter. And that's whenever other people would be brought to, Izuku's attention. Specific other people. Very specific other people. Very specific other people. What specific people, you may ask? Oh, not much. You could need, say, 7. Those 7 introducing themselves slowly but surely. The first one to introduce themselves being an individual who introduced themselves very weirdly, in Izuku's opinion. But then again, who was he? Who was he to judge? I mean, he was freaking a robot. And he was kind of stuck this way from now on. Kind of, still introduced himself pretty weird. Been like, yo, I'm Twice. Wanna be butts? No, we hate that dude. Basically, yeah, that would kind of be how that happened. Basically, introducing themselves as Twice. First, wanting to be buds with him, but then deciding that they wanted, to hate him. And not really being able to make up their mind. Basically, super bipolar. And the next person, to greet him, being someone who, basically said that they were Atsuhiro Seiko, also known as Mr. Compress. And basically demonstrating his quirk by using it on Twice. And then releasing him. Though he did indeed state that he could indeed crush these little marbles. And probably kill Twice, if it had been any time sooner and he had wanted to change his mind on things. But, he decided that he wasn't that kind of guy. Plus, they were all supposed to be allies here. And, basically after Twice and Mr. Compress had basically revealed themselves, after they had revealed themselves to other individuals, however, one of them, Izuku would actually have been able to sense, he didn't just have one quirk, he had 9 quirks. This making Izuku very apprehensive about this specific individual. And, his name even confirming it. He was called 9. And the guy next to him, his name was Wolfram. However, the 3 others that would introduce themselves would be Fang, Bark, and Bean. Fang was really good with guns. Bark had extreme brute strength. And as for Bean, he was known as being the dynamite for a reason. You did not want to get into close quarters with that guy. Regardless if you thought he was like a duck dinner or not. And so it's basically, ragtag group that basically assembled themselves together. And, well, Gentle bringing up a very obvious point that Rob even seconded the notion. Well, this was great and all, but they kind of needed some sort of a leader if they, wanted to get anything started. They needed a leader. And there was much debate that is until basically, LeBron was like, that was actually a trick question. We already had a leader in mind. Considering certain things, me and Gentle both agree that certain Izuku Midoriya would be perfect for the job. Or as would be instead, Metal Sonic. Do you indeed agree? And Izuku would be like, what, he, the leader? Then again, he would think back to his analytical mind and how he was always able to deduce the quirks of people and the weaknesses and strengths of their quirks, everything down to the finest detail. And also, he wasn't that bad, of a bruiser after so much training that he had been doing. Mental fortitude, emotional fortitude, and, actual physical fortitude. Well, the weakest out of those three that he was at was basically emotional fortitude. But that can only be expected after all, basically, his father did just die right in front of him. So that can only be expected to be the case. But basically, even though they would need to get themselves a leader if Izuku decided to, accept what Gentle Criminal and Labrava were throwing down, what would they call themselves? I mean, every team of villainy has to have something to them that would signify that they were a team of villainy. Otherwise, they would just be kind of considered a bunch of super slubs. Trying to make it big without really any purpose. Or anything to their name. If any. Because they wouldn't really have one. And then Izuku's mind was brought to the Nomu that All Might was fighting. He also needed something like that. Indeed, creatures that he could use as certain backup to the, founding members of the group. They were also needed sorts of foot soldiers, disposable creatures that they could use to bolster their ranks. Much like the Nomu, they indeed would need something like that in order to help with their, sort of station as a group of villainy. If they were indeed to do this, they would need to do it right. And basically, this is where Wolfram and Nine would basically already have that covered. As basically, with Fang, Bean, and Bark, basically having discussed some things with them, they would know exactly where to get something like that. And the good thing is, the Doctor, Dr. Eggman, had basically abandoned the place, not really seeing much use, and, using it anymore. That's his loss, their gain. These creatures, known as Gizoids. Very ancient, technologically advanced weapons of an old race of, doing things their way, known as the Nocturnus tribe of the Echidnas. And how their leader, Pure Elf Ix, basically, took that in stride all wholeheartedly. And how the strongest of them was pretty much tied in between two different Gizoids. One who seemed a little bit more loyal to Eggman at first, but then they found out that, neither of their loyalties really lied to the Doctor. More or less, they were just trying to figure out what the hell they were even there for originally. Basically, what would seem to be the two best of their own craft, the two best Gizoids at their disposal if they were to actually take the Gizoids for themselves, Emerald and Gemerald. And basically, everyone agreeing with this, and that they would basically find a time to, storm the base, and, meet up with Emerald and Gemerald, and basically discuss everything. Make sure they knew that, what they were exactly doing, and then took the Gizoids, as well as Emerald and Gemerald, and for themselves in stride. Basically, they would also, need a better, more fortified, more secure base of operations. And then there's also that problem with the name. And actually thinking about something that his father had told him once about a certain situation that happened. Basically, they had been christened the Doomsday Zone by Sonic himself and friends. Basically, giving Izuku a little bit of an idea on what he wanted to do. Basically, deciding that name Team Doomsday. And basically, in terms of, finding, sort of better station, basically, Izuku didn't really think that they had to really leave the lab in which they would have found the Gizoids. More or less just reconfigure it into something, more suitable for their needs. Basically, just redecorate and appropriate. And everyone seemed to actually find that was actually a pretty, actually solid plan. And so they would do as such. And, well, it wouldn't be long, after Team Doomsday basically, settled in with everything. Even their army of Gizoids and their two Gizoid generals. Their two Gizoid generals, Emerald and Gemerald, were actually very loyal. Surprisingly loyal, actually. And so, upon hearing about some information from some extraordinarily loose-lipped individuals sort of linked to the League of Villains about something that they were going to do. Something of a USJ attack. And because of a new member that they just so happened to get, basically only really become a new member because they were tired of being bullied into the ground because of the way, of their quirk. This person being Hitoshi Shinso. And their quirk basically allowing them to make that League of Villains member so loose-lipped. Because the moment they answered, or at least tried to answer, the question that he had popped, or at least say anything to him, they were under the control of his quirk. Literal brainwashing. And basically, Shinso had basically brainwashed this guy into not only telling him everything that he wanted to know, but immediately after that, commit freaking seppuku. Yeah, because nobody needed to know. And besides, they even had their own little informant inside the league already, because the league weren't exactly good at being secretive. And so technically, Shinso wasn't the only the only addition. Also, a certain Himaka Toga being their little informant within the league. And nobody, not even All For One himself, being any the wiser of this fact. But because of this, person and their quirk and what it does, well, it could indeed be said that Himaka Toga basically had finally found a purpose. Because of basically what her quirk does. And basically, with Shinso basically telling, Toga where the body was supposed to be, and, being pretty right in where it was supposed to be, Toga had basically found the body, and basically draining it of all the blood, so that she could basically be this person for however long she wanted to be, or needed to be, for any given situation, where it would be necessary to indeed do that. Just in case they need a little bit of an extra edge. Not only is Tomoga... I was thinking of, forgetting... Ragdoll. Shit. Not only is Toga very useful, asset whenever it comes to certain things, but, and what she exactly is an asset of, she's a very good tag team whenever considering, Shinso's abilities as well. The literal fact of his quirk being brainwashing, and then Toga's quirk being some sort of vampiric, blood-sucking, and appearance, taking quirk. They make for the perfect demon-ass tag team, whenever considering that Toga was basically planted in there as a sort of informant. To basically, have any knowledge that the League has, basically being given to Team Doomsday. And Shinso just assisting with that whole entire, informant thing entirely with his quirk. But they weren't just simple quirk slouches. No, Himiko and Shinso, they also trained their bodies. Because Izuku was like, if they were going to train their quirks, then they also needed to train their bodies and their minds. And since Shinso was also pretty smart already, he didn't really need to do too much training on his mind, but still, trained anyways. And, well, Himiko being very unorthodox sometimes in the way that she thought or thinks, regardless of the situation, Shinso decided to get, a little bit of, the way of, helping, their little demon tag team that they got there. Basically helping, Toga even out her own thoughts. Literally, demon-ass tag team. Being Hitoshi Shinso and Himako Toga. And to think, not even anyone in the league, not even All For One, or Shigaraki, know that Toga's actually working for Team Doomsday. And just informing them about stuff that the league planned to do. And considering that Team Doomsday actually have a literal army of Gizoids and 2 Gizoid generals, I mean, that's just damn. And you might exactly be wondering how exactly Izuku could drink, the herbal gray tea that, Gentle was giving everybody. And also, Shinso and Toga were indeed there, to drink the tea as well. And just to make sure that Toga would actually be able to enjoy it herself, they did put a little bit of blood in the mix with the, original herbal tea in her cup. Librava assisting with that because Gentle wasn't exactly a biggest fan of getting his hands dirty with any sort of blood, even if it was to help Toga with her situation. But yet that still wasn't, the only thing to happen. There was yet another member to help with the growth of, well, their ranks. As one day, oh wait, I also have to remember to answer that question about how Izuku was able to drink the tea, even though Melisandre doesn't have a mouth. Well, that's even a mystery to Gentle and Labrava themselves, how he's able to do that. Even they don't know how, but he is able to do so. And on the fact that it hasn't even stopped growing the ranks even since, how is this so? Well, you could indeed say a certain someone feeling betrayed because basically got thrown to the wayside, after Eggman feeling that they were no longer useful, just like their friends, in which Eggman basically revealing that, you thought I had killed your friends. No, I just basically throw them out to, die in some sort of wasteland. And so eventually, this person would scamper off to where they had heard somewhat of a certain villain group that basically would accept certain people, but only certain people. And so the person would try to approach what they believed to be the base whenever they would fall through a freaking manhole, and after several whatever amount of time of trudging, they would see some sort of faulty sort of entrance wall, and they would break through it and then reassemble it once they had gone past, as to make sure nobody noticed. And they would see this was yet another secret entrance into that of Team Doomsday. Just one of many secret entrances. This person would have, for the longest time within the Doctor's ranks, gone by the name of Infinite. So they would use that as their villain name. And yet they would even be surprised whenever it would be presented with something which they thought they would basically long, never ever have in their presence ever again. The person presenting it to them would be the very leader of this team, showing absolute trust in basically giving them what they used to use as an absolute tool of power, the Phantom Ruby. And even their old mask and other equipment. Yes. Infinite would be amongst the ranks of Team Doomsday. Infinite actually being used to basically, get yet another recruit, and with the power of the Phantom Ruby, basically demoralizing this certain person, it was indeed easy to, catch them, detain them, until they were ready to cooperate, and once they were basically ready to see reason, they were accepted into the ranks as well. This person being Scourge, the Hedgehog. And then, what basically presented to Infinite after that is the fact that the long thought to be dead Jackal Squad members, fellow Jackal Squad members of Infinite himself, were not dead and that they were actually flourishing in the midst of the ranks of Team Doomsday, yet it needed basically Izuku, now the villain Metal Sonic, had to ensure that Infinite would stay loyal once he had figured this out, or at least been told about it. And so he had sent him on that mission to recruit Scourge onto their, ranks as well, in order to make sure that Infinite was loyal. And once Scourge saw basically just how absolutely jacked all of Team Doomsday was, like just how strong they were. That they literally had an army of freaking metal ass machines that were crazy ass powerful. Basically made the Nomu look like freaking jokes. And that the only thing relatively close to their actual power were like the freaking what like they were talking about like the high end Nomu. However, the generals of the Gazoid army, just one of them by themselves, let alone two of them, that would just be easy peasy lemon squeezy, GGEZ. For two of them, they would just like mop the floor with the damn thing. But one of them could easily defeat it, but two of them, that would just be way too much. That would just be way too hard for such an easy thing to do with just one of them. Not even the high-end Nomu could match both generals going after. Both Emerald and Gemerald. And it would just basically be upon this where Izuku would realize what he had accomplished. In such little time, in fact. He had basically created his own little villain gig. Though we didn't really see them so much as villains as kindred spirits. In which Scourge would actually think about that and think that he might actually be able to do something about that. And basically would reveal to Izuku that he wasn't the only one to have this power of a sort of metal being. It's just the person to also have this power wasn't exactly sure if they'd actually willingly, join. In fact, the person actually seems to be the farthest thing from a potential villain-ish that they were as possible that you could get. Someone suspecting it would be so good to have them on their ranks because they would be so unsuspecting that it would just be absolutely hilarious once the rug was pulled from underneath all these heroes to see just what exactly was there all along that they had just let slip by and never even seen it coming. till it was too late. And all because she wanted to help her parents, as they had supported her for so long in her life, that she felt that it would only be right to do the same for them. And in order to do that, she felt that the only thing that she could do is to become a hero. And so she would join UA in order to do that. And this would just bring all sorts of feelings up to the surface for Izuku, as, it would just be like, she thinks that the only way that she can actually, willingly, actually support her parents is to become a hero. That's just sad. Because for Izuku, all the life of a hero or anything hoping to be a hero ever did for him was just take, and take. And this girl isn't even aware of that level of cruelty. And then he just hears the name in his head. The name of the girl, and the name of the very thing she was meant to be the reincarnation of. Shard the Metal Sonic. The name of the girl, Ochako Uraraka.